Greetings, everyone. It's about 3 minutes after the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the 19th Annual Pre-ICIS Workshop on HCI Research in MIS. My name is Mark Grimes. I'm one of the program co-chairs along with Chiwi Tan and Brian Dunn. And I'm going to be sharing just a little bit of information about the workshop before we get started with the presentations here in about 5 or 6 minutes. So obviously this year is a little bit different than past workshops. However, we do have a really great program put together for today. And in this world of increasing computer-mediated communication, we're of course going to be needing to use all of our HCI skills and resources to maintain a nice and interactive program today. And I think we're going to be able to do that using this really neat Remo platform. So to that end, I hope many of you did have an opportunity to watch the training videos on Remo so you could gain a little bit of a better understanding of how this system is going to work. But if not, hopefully you do find the system to be intuitive enough to use. And if not, there is a help desk table on each floor of our building in Remo. So you can stop by there and one of the workshop coordinators will be able to help you out, or you can send a chat message to one of us or to our AIS staff member who's going to be able to help you out. So a few statistics about the workshop to get started. We have 240 attendees registered, which is a new record for the SIG HCI workshops. So that's very exciting news. We had 23 submissions, and of those 23 submissions, 10 that were accepted, giving us an effective acceptance rate of 44%. And we're introducing a new format this year for papers that were not accepted for a full paper presentation. We're debuting the Rapid Research Roundtable. And for this, we asked the authors to compose a 1-minute video summarizing the highlights of their research. And just a little bit later today, we're going to be watching together a montage of these 1-minute videos. There are 12 of them. And then following these 1-minute videos, we'll have a 1-hour interactive session in Remo where there's a table devoted to each one of the Rapid Research Roundtable papers. And we can all stop by and chat a little bit and do some development, some mentoring and some working together. And I think it's going to be a really nice developmental environment. So something that we're very excited to be able to do in this virtual platform that might not be as easy to do if we were face to face. So it's going to be a nice thing there. A couple of points about this schedule. So we're going to be getting started here in just the next 5 minutes or so. And all of these times are, of course, in Eastern Standard Time. At 8:10, we're going to have our first paper session where we have 2 completed research papers. Then from 8:50 to 9:35, our second paper session, which is 3 research in progress papers. And then from 9:35 to 10, our first interactive session, which is going to be on the first floor of Remo, which is where most of you are right now. And you'll note that 5 of the tables have a paper name associated with them. So we're going to ask the authors to be at that table, and all of our workshop attendees can kind of circulate around and have a chance to talk to the authors. So during these paper presentation sessions, it's going to be kind of like what's happening right now, where you are not able to share your video or audio or screen sharing or anything like that. However, you are still able to use the text chat functionality. So what we're going to ask is that you submit any questions you have through the text chat, and then one of the workshop facilitators at the conclusion of the presentation will read those questions, and the author will be invited to the stage and be able to respond aloud to those questions. So that's our first set of papers. Then we'll have a 10-minute break. And then we'll have our Rapid Research Roundtable video montage, followed by our second interactive session, which will be on the second floor of Remo. We'll again have a 10-minute break and then have our final paper session, which is going to kind of be the same format as the first paper session that we are just about to get into. So at the conclusion of all of our research presentations, we have two amazing keynotes. First at 1:35, our industry keynote with Dr. Mary Cherwinski from Microsoft. And then at 2:25, our closing keynote with the very influential Dr. Ben Schneiderman. So one thing that I will point out, and you've got this in your email and other documentation, but there is a different Remo link for the keynote presentations, because we do have people who are going to be attending the keynote that didn't register for the full workshop. So two different Remo links. Make sure you're in the right place at 1:35, because you're not going to want to miss these. And then finally, we'll be back in this Remo link at 3:10 for the awards ceremony and business meeting, which you are all invited to attend. Okay, a couple of things about the interactive sessions. So note that there is a limit of 8 people per table in Remo, and this includes the author of the paper. So we've asked that only one author from all of the papers be at the table, so we can have as many workshop participants there as possible. And we're going to ask that you mingle around a little bit between the tables so that everyone gets an opportunity to visit all of the papers they would like. So to encourage this, we are going to have a 5-minute timer to remind you, not force you to move, but remind you that, hey, I need to go around and check out some other papers during sessions 1 and 3. And then during the rapid research roundtable, we're extending that timer out to 15 minutes, just to remind you to rotate around. When you're not sitting at a paper-oriented table, there are several general networking tables on each floor and on floors 5 and 6 of Remo, where you can either kind of wait or you can network with some of your other colleagues. One more thing that we are introducing this year is the People's Choice Award. And this is the award for the best talk of the workshop. Now, this is distinct from the Best Paper Award, which has already been decided, and we'll talk more about at the awards ceremony this afternoon. But this is for you to vote on which presentation you feel was the most entertaining, interesting, informative, gripping, impressive, mind-blowing. You get the picture, right? This is just the presentation that you liked the most, you thought was the best. So voting is going to be open from 1 o'clock to 2:30 Eastern time. So that's as soon as the final paper presentations are done. And here is the link, and I think we'll be sending this out via chat or some other method where you can vote starting at 1 o'clock. And this will be awarded at the awards ceremony as well. And there's also going to be a survey about your overall workshop experience, which we're going to kindly ask, of course, that you fill out so we can continue to improve the experience for everyone and get a better understanding of how this online platform has worked and maybe what components of this type of online interaction we might want to continue having, even when we're able to be face-to-face again, hopefully next year. So with that, again, welcome to this 19th annual Pre-ICIS workshop, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to ask our AIS facilitator to invite one of the authors from our first paper up to the stage, and I am going to be, for each of these presentations, playing a recorded video of their presentation, and then at the conclusion of that, we'll be able to have a couple of minutes of Q&A time. So again, for the Q&A, just type your questions into the text chat, and then we'll read those aloud and do it that way. So again, new platform, and we're kind of learning as we go, but I think we're gonna have a great day ahead of us. So thank you all for being here, and let's go ahead and get started. And I should note that this first paper, Telling an Attractive Digital Story, is one of our nominees for the Best Paper Award. So here we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meng Yao. I come from City of Rossville, Hong Kong.
All right, so that's it for our first video, and I believe we have Ming Yao on the stage with us for any questions. So I'm looking in the chat and in the Q&A section of the chat. So if we do have any questions, let's put them there. And we do have one question. It says, thank you for your presentation. I'm interested to know how you measured the product exposure in this research. So we have about 5 minutes to do our Q&A. So Mingyao, if you'd like to address that.
Hello, everyone. Okay. The first question is how we measure the product exposure in this research. I think all of you know that Apple App Store has a strict policy about their data, so we didn't know the actual download. So in this study, we use some proxy to predict the product exposure in this research. It means after the story has been released on the homepage, we will count that it will stay on the homepage for a whole week, just 7 days. So in this period, we will count that all these apps which have been showed on the in the story, how many times it has been showed on the top list. That means if it has been exposure successfully, it will be recorded as into the top list. So the product exposure is equal to the times it has been posted on the top list. Hope it can answer your question.
Excellent. All right, I had one question. So you looked at the difference in paid apps versus free apps. Do you think it matters based on the type of the app, whether it's a game or a productivity app or entertainment or something like that?
Yeah. We think the category is very important in the in the app. In fact, we have tried to take the category into consideration, but the data set is limited because the app has many categories like the. So we just have a easy trial to separate them into utilized app and game app. But the result is not very related to this study, so we didn't report it here. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
It is really an interesting direction to investigate this study. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for submitting this interesting research and video. And again, this is one of the papers that's been nominated for our Best Paper Award. So the other nominee will be in the next set of sessions after our rapid research roundtable. But thank you, Ming Yao. And at this point, I think it's about 8:30 Eastern. So we'll go ahead and get started with our next presentation. So, and again, we'll have a table devoted to this paper in our first interactive session, which will be starting after this first round of presentations. If you have more questions. Our next presentation is using digital nudges on analytics dashboards to reduce anchoring bias. Here we go.
Hi, I'm
All right, so thanks for that excellent video and presentation. We have about 5 minutes now for questions, and I believe our presenter Barack is coming up to the stage as we speak. So really nice presentation, really interesting study. And while we're waiting on a few questions to come in, I will pose one question to you myself. I thought it was really nice how you pointed out that you kind of had a little bit of benefit in this study, that because it's online, you weren't limited by geography or anything like that. And I found it really interesting that the educative nudges worked better than the social nudges. But do you think, or one, why do you think that is? And then two, do you think maybe there's a social or a cultural aspect to that you might be able to pick apart, since you can do this on kind of a worldwide scale?
So thank you very much for the question. And by the way, thank you very much for everyone to taking your time to listen to our presentation. It's really exciting to be here in front of a crowded audience. First of all, it was very interesting for us to see that social nudges did not work as well as the educative nudge, because we thought the educative nudge was a little bit more information in terms of crowded, in terms of the presented information. So we thought that could be overwhelming for some participants. And that's actually what we saw. So for social nudges, as I said in the presentation, maybe that could be an outcome of having a fictitious scenario in the experiment. So we mentioned their managers and their colleagues in the same department, but we could not give any name for a specific person. Maybe if an experiment could be done in a field, a social nudge could have an impact. So we are still thinking that could have an impact, but maybe having a fictitious company could like reduce the impact. And about the differences in educative nudge, as I said, people with lower knowledge were actually confused about the educative nudge, and educative nudge reduced their performance and made them anchor more on the initial values. So it's still dependent on their initial knowledge level. And regarding the cultural differences among the different regions, that could be an interesting question, but for some countries we had like 10 observations, and for some of them we had 20. We didn't think that we had enough number of observations, so we did not look at that, but it's an interesting observation, and I will check if there is a difference between different countries.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, we have another question from the audience. We have just about 2 minutes left here. It says, I was wondering if you had any plans of testing this on a simpler task to see if task complexity might have had an effect on the results.
So we tried to keep the task as simple as possible, and it's just 3 regions and 4 products. So they needed to analyze where they had stockouts. So we thought the experiment was pretty simple. The only thing that they needed to look at was the stockout experiences in each day. But we can still try to make it more simpler, and I think it could work well.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that. And I see quite a few nice comments coming in the chat room. So you'll be taking a look at that. And again, when we get into our first interactive session, there will be a table dedicated to this paper. So stop by and talk to Barak and learn more about this fascinating work. So thank you very much. Very nice job. And I believe it's time to move on to our third paper. So thanks again. And next up, we're going to be talking about the effects of physiological arousal and message framing on fitness app users' privacy decisions.
Hello.
All right, excellent. So now I think we have our presenter on her way up to the stage. And I should note, this is now getting into our second session. So this was our first research in progress paper, so slightly shorter presentations and just 3 minutes instead of 5 minutes for Q&A. So if you do have questions, go ahead and put them into the Q&A section of the chat. But very interesting to me. I really like the kind of on the ground aspect of things and the way that was running. I did have one question about the source of the physiological arousal. Does it matter where that comes from? Because things like fitness tracking apps or running a marathon and posting that on Instagram or whatever, kind of a different situation than if someone just had a physically demanding job, working in a warehouse or digging ditches or something like that. Would that type of physiological arousal result in the same effect, do you think?
Sorry? Okay. Yes, I think so. There's another consequence of this kind of physical exercise with fatigue. So maybe the participant will be tired after they finish the exercise, which for one solution, we control the exercise duration and exercise type and intensity to include that as the control variable. But so because this is a very preliminary study, and in the subsequent study, we may be applying to more experiments to address this concern. Maybe the next experiment will not involve some physical exercise. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and in fact, I think that kind of hit on the other question that is in the chat, which asked if we think there might be other aspects of physical exercise that impact the DV. Yeah, so good stuff.
Yes, I can see from that maybe the subject's risk avoidance propensity. Thank you, Sherry, for bringing up this point. We'll consider to control this as our controllables. Thank you.
All right, thank you, G. And I think now it is 9:05 Eastern time, so I'm going to move on to our next presentation, which is our second research in progress paper. Remind me later in mobile security notifications, what factors lead users to deferred security coping behavior? All right, thanks, Greg. Really interesting study there. So we have time for just maybe one question or so here, and we'll defer some to the interactive session. One thing I was thinking about is whenever my phone does a security update, it only lets me defer twice or maybe 3 times. And that really stresses me out because I think about, well, I don't want to do it now, but if I defer, am I going to be doing something even more important or that I want to quit even less in the future? So does this like limited number of deferrals perhaps factor into the equation somehow? And I think you're muted, by the way.
We haven't done that yet, but that's something that designers found out when they started pushing this type of thing that you can defer. They found that people just kept deferring and would not update. So they changed that because they found out that, yes, people just keep deferring indefinitely. So right now we're just looking at not the operating system with the security updates, which are forced at some point. This is more the applications who are saying, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? And you can keep putting those off for almost indefinitely still at this point. So we're still just testing within that environment.
Excellent. And so in the interest of time, we actually kind of need to move on, but there are some great questions coming in the Q&A that I think will be covered on your table about the vividness and task type and mental health and things like that. So really cool study, and I look forward to hearing more about it. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
And then we have our final paper for this session, which is our third research in progress paper, evaluating charitable crowdfunding based on storytelling linguistic cues, a narrative persuasion perspective. There we go. Microphone didn't want to come on. All right. Great presentation. And I think we have Zhengzi come up to the stage now. We have a couple of questions, and probably only have time for one at this point. But of course, you'll be able to address more questions at the interactive session that's coming up. So one of our attendees says it seems like trustworthiness can also be a factor. So how do you think trustworthiness might fit into this story?
Well, I think trustworthiness is definitely something worth considering, but I think it's slightly different because trustworthiness actually, it sounds like the source credibility. So it's more about to what extent the information is real, but there's a slightly difference in storytelling. So which the verisimilitude actually can be a better measure for the likeness, because just as I have mentioned in the slides, actually it does not need to be the factor. The story doesn't need to be persuasive, to be a factual, to be persuasive. So in that case, I would say it can be a made-up story. So theoretically, but it still can be sounds realistic. But and the persuasion effect does not be affected by the credibility of the information. But actually, and it's more about how the information is structured and managed on people's perception. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure if this would answer the questions.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And actually, there are quite a few questions in the Q&A section. So in the interest of time, we do actually need to move on into the interactive session. But I would recommend going in there and maybe copying those down. And I'm sure much of this will come up in your table talk, which is what we are about to move into. So like I said, be sure to grab those questions. And thanks to everyone for contributing all these questions and for your great contribution to this first interactive session. So thanks, Zhengzi, and thanks to all of our presenters so far. So this is going to conclude session 1 and session 2, our first 5 papers of the workshop. At this point, we're going to have our first interactive session where we'll have a chance to video chat with the authors and with your colleagues who are here at the workshop. So the session is going to be 25 minutes long, so from 9:35 to 10 o'clock Eastern, and then from 10 until 10:10, we have a short break, and which of course you can stay in the remote chat during that break if you would like. And then at 10:10, we'll start the first, we'll start the rapid research roundtable with our 15-minute video montage, which will then lead into our second interactive session. So once I stop sharing my video here, you guys will all be released into Remo. And like I mentioned, these 5 papers each have a table on the first floor of Remo where you can go to discuss more. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with interactive session 1, and we'll be back here at 10:10 for the rapid research roundtable. Thanks, everyone.